Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Really appreciate you joining us for this meeting. The meeting is regarding the Environmental Management Program and its work in partnership with the Bettis Laboratory. And just a little bit of orientation for you first. You walked in the main entrance. If we need to evacuate for any reason, there's another entrance exit at the other end of the building. Restrooms down the hall. Ladies' room past the water fountain. The other restroom, the men's room, is before the water fountain. If there's an emergency or any situation downstairs, we have the police. So just orientation for you. Again, thank you for joining us for this meeting. We're going to talk about a project at the Bettis Laboratory. And thank you for coming. It's probably a very busy time of year with school just starting and things like that. So appreciate you joining us. And our host this evening is the Borough of West Mifflin. Brian Kamoff has made this room and this evening available for us, which we very much appreciate. Wanted to let you know that the meeting is being recorded. The presentation part of the meeting is being recorded. We'll have questions and answers later, but we won't be recording that. And that's to encourage people who might be a little bit nervous about talking on camera, just be able to be comfortable and ask your questions. So I wanted to make that out of the way. Sign in, I think everybody signed in, and wanted to let you know a little bit about comments. We will take your comments later, but there are a variety of ways for you to provide comments. You can ask a question later on. Feel free to stand up and ask your question. There's a comment self-mailer. If you want to think about a question towards the end of the meeting and mail it in, you can mail it in. There's also index cards out there where you can write a question, or you can ask us to write a question for you, and we can read it anonymously if you'd prefer that. So there's a variety of ways. There's also, and we'll talk about this later as well, there's a website with the project, and there is an email address specifically for the project. So there's a variety of ways for you to reach out to us. Let's see, a bit of further orientation. I don't know if you had a chance to look, but over here on the right side, we have a lot of information about the Naval Reactors program, which is what the Bettis Laboratory is about. There's a lot of history over there. And over here, we have fact sheets about the project, the CERCLA process, which I'll talk about in detail, frequently asked questions, the project itself, the documents that have been prepared, and let's see, on transportation, because that's usually a question that the public is asking about for projects that might generate some waste. And we know that streets and roads are an issue around here, so we want to be able to talk specifically about transportation. So help yourself to these materials. They're also available on the project website, with the exception of the booklets over there from the Naval Reactors program. And one of the things I wanted to say, and I'm guilty of this, but I'll start it at the beginning. This is about the Environmental Management Program, which we will refer to frequently as EM. And then there's Naval Reactors, which we will refer to as NR. But we are going to try to moderate our use of acronyms and try to define everything first before we go off into these sentences that have acronyms. So we could be guilty of that, but wanted to give you a chance ahead of time to know we're going to wind ourselves with that. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss the partnership between the Environmental Management Program and Naval Reactors to address a couple of facilities at the Bettis Laboratory right here in West Mifflin. And the goal is to provide you with the opportunity to listen to the presentation, to ask questions, and to learn more about the project. And some of you may have read the documents that were available online and available at the library, or you may not. So this may be your experience to learn about the project. So we have the purpose and the goals for the meeting. Let's see. Okay, communications. Communications for this project started early on. In fact, one of the people here is a member of the Executive Council for West Mifflin Borough, and she was here when we first met with the project team in January. So we've been communicating about this project off and on. There's been communication with the regulators as well. And this is our opportunity. We issued a community involvement plan at the beginning of August, available on the website, available at the library. So this is a part of the process of communicating with the public, because the thing about the process that we use for this project, it is a public process. No decision has been made about what will happen with the facilities at the laboratory, and we want to hear from you about the alternatives that we're going to discuss this evening. Let me check one more thing. Okay, this is your chance to learn about the Environmental Management Program, which may be an unknown for you, as well as to learn about the Bettis Laboratory and the Naval Reactors program. You have a national treasure in this community, and you may not be aware of the importance of the site, but this will be your chance to learn more about it. So speaking on behalf of the Environmental Management Program is Mr. Matt Young. So he's here from the Environmental Management Consolidated Business Center. And then speaking on behalf of the Naval Reactors Program is Mr. David Harper. And he's with the Naval Reactors Laboratory Field Office. If you wanted a long title, you got it. So he's here. And these two gentlemen, along with myself, will be presenting this evening. So sit back, enjoy, listen, and at the end, ask questions as you'd like. Thank you. Oh, actually, ground rules. We are going to save questions to the end because I've said about it being recorded. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity for presentation, and then we'll turn off the microphone and the video camera and then ask questions at that. So thank you very much. Any questions actually right now before we get started? Okay, take it away, Matt.
Welcome again, everybody. My name is Matt Young, as Leslie introduced me. We're excited to be in this partnership with Naval Reactors to work on these facilities that have reached the end of their useful life. For a little bit of orientation here, this is the Bettis facility itself. This is a view looking from the north, looking south. The sea area is the area closest to us, and we'll introduce you to the two buildings here in a little bit that we're going to be working on. For Department of Energy Environmental Management, we are the largest environmental cleanup program in the world. Our mission elements, we specialize in facility decommissioning and deactivation, along with soil and groundwater remediation. And our other big focus, right, is transuranic or radioactive waste and solid waste management. The photos down here on the left-hand side, those are photos of different projects that we've completed around the country. They are not photos of the Bettis site, but this is the type of work that we will be performing. So the Office of Environmental Management has performed cleanup projects at over 107 different sites around the country. On this map here, you see 17 of those sites. And then also shows you some orientation of where the Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory is there. Yeah. We're not showing the 90 sites that we've cleaned up. So we've performed over 90 cleanups already in the country. We have 17 cleanup sites actively working. And of those cleanup sites, that totals an area about the size of Rhode Island and Delaware combined. So we've done quite a bit of work throughout the history of our program. I will turn it over now to Mr. Harper to talk a little about Naval Reactors.
They didn't ask me if I was going to be nervous in front of the camera, so they wouldn't turn it off for me. So there you go. I'm Dave Harper. I work for the Naval Reactors Laboratory Field Office. Our headquarters is Naval Reactors, DC. Bettis is a government-owned, contractor-operated facility. Fluor Marine Propulsion is now our current contract. The Bettis Laboratory, as you can see, one of its primary missions is powering maritime dominance, and we do it through our carriers, our submarines. The Navy is over 40% nuclear, and I will tell you, if you're paying attention to what's going on in the world, our boats are everywhere right now, and our op tempo is up, and our sailors are out there a lot. You can see the Nautilus is in the center up there. It was the original first submarine underway. A little bit of story about our submarine, our program. The nuclear power program started over 75 years ago. Rick Over's tasked to go create a nuclear submarine. From the time he was assigned that responsibility to, it took him under 7 years to basically design, build, and put a submarine underway, which is incredible because if you remember back then, the technology didn't even exist. You can see the site. We just purchased the Valley National Gas property on the west. It's now up to a little under 230 acres. We are in the borough of West Mifflin. It's quite interesting when you go out and talk to people outside. They don't always know we're here. And I will tell you, as I talk through the mission here, I mean, we're one of the most precious sites for the U.S. Navy and national defense. For what they do, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do. But the site was originally an airfield, and there's actually rumors that they had the paint closed on the runway because after we bought the property, planes were still trying to land there. And so if you were to go on the site, you could see down that there's the remnants of the two runways are still there. The government, the property was acquired for the government for the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program in 1949. As you can see, we've been over there over 75 years. There's no plan for us to go anywhere. We're staying there because we have an ever-changing and important mission to the nation, and we know it. Naval Reactors is active and enduring for the national security mission. The principal function of the Bettis Laboratory is design and research. They're developing new technology all the time. Ideally, they'd like to develop technology that basically spans the life of the boat. And so where they would put a component in the ship and it never has to replace it, especially in the nuclear power plant, because that requires time, it requires money, it also takes ships offline. And one thing we don't want to do right now is unnecessarily take a ship offline if we can avoid it. I know I'm talking fast. Recently, we decommissioned the CVN-65, which was Enterprise, and it's the operator. That's the new Enterprise. No, she doesn't go to space yet, but we're hoping that's the next version. But the technology on that aircraft carrier is basically, Nimitz class has been in service for over 40 years. This is the next generation. We expect her to probably stay in service for over 40 years. And then we'll work on the next, while we're working on the next technology. But the difference between the Nimitz class and her is incredible. And so if you ever get a chance to tour a carrier, it's incredible. The Bettis Laboratory, this is actually the sale of the USS San Francisco. She's now ex-San Francisco, but she's down at MTS as a prototype. We always train on live steam before we send our sailors to sea. We brought it up here when we sent her down there. If you check your news, she actually had an underwater fender bender, which is quite a testament to the technology of our submarines because the ship came home. There was one fatality, though. We have a sign at the laboratory that recognizes that. But there's a lot of office areas. If you were to come on site now, you would say this looks like a college campus. There's a reason for that, because we're bringing in the young generation. We want them to work in quality offices and quality testing labs. We have testing labs, which are prototypical testing. We'll set up an environment where we can test a component and basically test it for its entire life in a short period of time so we can stay ahead of any problems on ships. We have machine shops. We have construction that's going on, maintenance, support facilities. We also have a very extensive emergency preparedness program, both for conventional hazards and for radiological hazards. And I will tell you right now, we've worked with the local military commands that we can go anywhere in the world within 24 hours to respond to a problem on our ships.
Right. Commercial.
Now's your chance.
All right, so now I'm going to introduce you to the C area. So as you see on the photo on the right-hand side here, CY is the building on the right, CX is the building on the left, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's inside of those buildings in a second. Currently the buildings are being maintained by the Office of Naval Reactors. Once an alternative is selected, if the alternative of demolition is selected, then the buildings will be turned over to operational control to environmental management, and at that time we'll be responsible for the cleanup and demolition of the buildings. During the life of the buildings, they housed research test reactors. Those test reactors are now defueled. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. And again, we'll get into the alternatives themselves as we move along through this presentation. So the first building we'll talk about is CX. This building was built in 1953. There were some additions made to the building in 1956. It is a two-story building, roughly 40,000 square feet. As you see, these high areas here, those are called high bays. So they actually extend all the way from the floor all the way to the top. It's a wide open bay for them to perform work in. These are constructed of concrete, with most of the walls inside these high bays are over 2 feet thick. So it's pretty impressive walking into them. Inside of the CX building, it houses 4 defueled test reactors. So inside those buildings, there are contaminants of concern in there. There's radiological, along with other regulated materials, common of old buildings such as lead, asbestos, things like that. So here's the inside of CX, or part of CX, showing the 4 test reactors. These reactors themselves are about 10 feet tall and about 6 feet wide, so they're pretty large vessels. I'm going to go back for a second. I forgot to talk about one thing here. So on the CX building, the portion with the white facade over here, that is the Naval Reactors shock and vibe testing facility. That is not part of our project. That building will remain. There's actually an addition that's been done on the back side of the building. You probably don't know it because this part of the property sits way far back off the road. But if you were to look at an aerial photograph, you would see that there's some construction going on back there in addition to that building. But it will remain. So when we come, or if the decision is made for demolition, there's processes that we have that we can separate the two and not damage the existing facility and allow them to keep on with their mission there. Here's a layout of the first floor of the building. The tan areas, those are where the test reactors are located. And then again, here is the shock and vibe, so that portion of the building will remain. And then here's a view of the second and third floor. This is the CY building. It was constructed in 1956. It houses 1 defueled test reactor, and then the photo up on the top right, that is showing one of the corridors that is where the engineering school is currently located on the facility. The engineering school is in the process of being relocated to another part of the Bettis campus. It too has similar contaminants of concern as the CX building did, with having radioactivity associated with the test reactors and piping, along with lead and asbestos, as you'd expect of older construction. Here's the interior of the CY building. Again, a photo of one of the defueled test reactor, along with a photo of one of the classrooms inside the reactor engineering school. And then this is the layout of the lower level. Again, the tan area showing where the reactor is located. And then here's the first floor, which this doesn't show, but this side over here, right, that's where the high bay is located, on that side over there. Turn it back over to Leslie to introduce you to the CERCLA program.
Thank you. All right. So some of you may or may not be familiar with the CERCLA process, and that's the process that's being used to evaluate the alternatives for the project. And one of the things I'll say is CERCLA. Yes, it is an acronym. Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, and we're using this as a process. And why are we using this one? It's because it's streamlined, it's efficient, it moves more quickly than other traditional processes, and that's what we want to be able to get to risk reduction in a more expeditious manner. So one of the things I will point out to you is that even though we're using the CERCLA process, and a lot of people think of CERCLA as Superfund or the National Priorities List, the Bettis Laboratory is not a Superfund site, it's not on the National Priorities List. We are taking advantage of a tool that's available to us, the CERCLA process. It's not a CERCLA project, so it's a CERCLA process. And the decision-making authority that DOE has to take this action is Executive Order 12580, which has been enacted since 1987, and it gives the department its own authority. They are working with their regulators, but they have the approval authority internal to the department. Okay. Okay, so what's the CERCLA process, and what is it going to be with the buildings that we're talking about? As they mentioned earlier, the buildings that are being discussed, they are at the end of their useful life. The buildings are largely vacant, so there's no reason for them. So a couple of documents have been prepared to document the history. The historical site assessment talks about the history of the building from 1953 or 1956 in the case of CY, and it talks about what it's been used for, what's gone on in there, what kind of spills or releases have occurred, what kind of people were in there, what kind of operations took place in those buildings. So it's a soup to nuts from the beginning to today of the history of that building. And that is the basis for, and I'm going to jump a little bit to the engineering evaluation cost analysis. That's the document that has the alternatives to address the contaminants in the building. So one of the things I'll jump back to is the fact that if you look on the far right, you see where it says public involvement initiated. The project team had a meeting with the West Mifflin Borough in January of this year. So this public process that I mentioned before, this continues throughout. You see the blue coloring, it's throughout this process. And we're right in the middle now, we've got the public meeting. So September 4th, the historical site assessment and the ECA, engineering evaluation cost analysis, was issued for a 30-day public review. And there's copies of the documents bound up together. There's a few clips of them in the room if you wanted to take a copy with you. So it's a public process. We are having a public meeting. This is consistent with what we put in our community involvement plan. And what's going to happen is after the meeting, there's still 2 more weeks to the 30-day public comment period. So if you learned something today and you might have had a question before and you have more questions now, ask your questions. You've got another couple of weeks to ask them. And there's different ways, as I said before, to get them submitted to the project. So, excuse me, the decision document for this process is called an action memorandum. No decision has been made on what will happen with these buildings. That's why we're having this meeting. We want to get your feedback. And we'll talk in a little bit, Matt will talk again about the alternatives that have been evaluated for the project. So there will be an action memorandum. It is the decision, and then there'll be additional characterization in the buildings as needed. And then a selected alternative will be implemented. That ECA includes the department's preferred alternative, but it is only preferred. It has not been a decision. So that is how the CERCLA process works. So as you can see, there's a public process throughout. There's technical documents that have been prepared based upon the history of the building, and the history of the building drives the ECA, which has the alternatives for what to do with the buildings, the options that are available. Okay, so this ECA that I mentioned, it's a public document. This is a public process. It includes the information that was harvested from the historical site assessment to develop the alternatives that are in the document. It explains the basis for the decision to employ a removal action. Like, why would we want to do this? Well, there's contaminants in the building, so they're risk drivers. So what do we want to do to be able to address those risks and hazards? And then it identifies, and as I mentioned, it recommends a preferred alternative. So it was not a snap decision. A lot of research went into developing the history of the building and developing the alternatives to address the buildings themselves. Okay, all right, so what are we doing for community involvement? Yeah, we're having this meeting, but there's a lot of history. So beginning in January at least, there was communication between the Naval Reactors program and their regulators, because it's a Naval Reactors facility and their site. We had the borough meeting in January. There's been communications, email communications, and also Teams type meetings with the regulators that they were communicated with about the project. So we had communications with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, either locally or in Harrisburg, the Bureau of Radiation Protection, and Allegheny County itself. That we talked to the West Mifflin Borough manager. That we established an administrative record file. So I referred to in August, we issued the community involvement plan. At that same time, we established the information repository at the Carnegie Library in Munhall and the administrative record. So those have been established, and that information repository, everything on our website is what's in that information repository. So there's a lot of information available to you. We launched, as I said, we launched the project website, and we used newspapers, a couple of newspapers and radio ads to talk about what had been issued about this meeting today, and going forward, after the action memorandum and the decision is made, there'll be another notification to the public about the decision that has been made. So that's what we have done. That's been a lot. And now what are we doing? We had this meeting, and then we have the 30-day public comment period. So it's an ongoing process. And then there'll be comment responses. You submit comments today. Our goal will be to answer your questions this evening. or send them into the website, and we'll show all of that information in a little bit. And we want to keep you informed, so the website will be kept up to date. If you go to the website next week, there will be fact sheets that are available at this meeting. They'll be on the website. We're hoping that this recording of the meeting will be on the website shortly as well. So there's a good record of what we've been doing throughout this process to keep you informed and to seek your information. And now it's Matt's turn again.
All right, so let's talk about the alternatives. Alternative one, this is the continued legacy facility management. So what does that mean? That means that we'll continue to do what we're doing right now. It's maintaining the building in its current state. So we will continue the routine surveillance, continue access controls, continue air monitoring, and continue maintenance activities to keep the building in a safe status. By doing this, we'll still continue to be compliant with state, local, and federal regulations. One thing to note though, alternative one does not reduce the existing radiological or chemical contamination associated with these buildings. Alternative two, this is the clean out alternative. So for this alternative, we would go in, we would remove the test reactors, the associated piping, decontaminate the high bays that those test reactors are located in, and then we would transport those reactors and components off-site for disposal at the licensed facility. After that, we would continue to maintain the facility. So like we were talking about in number one with maintaining the buildings in a safe status for consideration in the future on how to move forward. This alternative will reduce the overall volume or mass of radiological contamination, but some contamination will still remain in the buildings. So neither alternative one nor alternative two are permanent remedies to remove the hazards contained within them. And at some point, complete demolition of the buildings will need to be done. And alternative three. Alternative three, this is basically alternative two, where we would go in, remove all the test reactor and all the components, decontaminate the buildings, and then do a complete demolition of the buildings with, again, transportation of those debris to an off-site disposal facility. Once the buildings have been demolished, the soil beneath the buildings will be evaluated and remediated as necessary to meet what the future land use is of that portion of the property. See if I'm missing anything on this one. So for disposal of the components and the debris, we have already considered how can we minimize the impact to the community with trucks and vehicle traffic. So there is a rail line that runs along Thompson Run Road over there. So we have we're bringing in some rail spurs right now, and we can utilize those rail spurs if this is the alternative selected. So again, there would be a huge solution to remedy any traffic in the area. So here's a summary of the three alternatives. Again, alternative one, the continued legacy management of the buildings. We have on there, right, 30 years. That's an average of 30 years, right? We would continue to maintain the building for approximately 30 years and then basically have to go back and do this same review again to determine what's the best step moving forward. One item of note, with alternatives one and alternative two, there is continued maintenance that still has to be done to those buildings, right? So the price that we show here is just the price to do these actions. It does not include major repairs like a new roof or something like that. The cost for alternative one is approximately $32.4 million. And its effectiveness is considered to be interim, right? Like we talked before, within the alternative itself, it is just an interim action postponing a future decision on full, total, complete cleanup. Alternative two, as we mentioned, is a combination of one along with the removal of the test reactors. We estimate it'll take about 2.5 years to complete the removal of those test reactors and decontaminating the high bays. But then it will continue on for another approximate 30 years of continued legacy management of the buildings, and then again have to come back and evaluate. As I mentioned, that doesn't include major maintenance activities and the price of $45.3 million. Alternative 3, again, that's the complete demolition of the buildings. We estimate that's going to take about 4 years. While the cost is $79 million, that does alleviate any future maintenance costs associated with the buildings. And that effectiveness is complete. The buildings will be gone, property will be cleaned up, and Bettis can reutilize that footprint for future land use. So EM's preferred alternative, Alternative 3, is an effective and permanent remedy to remediate, eliminate the environmental legacy of the sea area. Our reasons for selecting Alternative 3 is it will remove all risks associated with those buildings. There'll be no more long-term facility management, and again, it'll make the area available for future use for Bettis site. So here's our working schedule. Right now, again, we're at the public meeting right here. There's a public comment period, as Leslie had discussed earlier, associated with our ECA. We are actively keeping that public comment period open for at least another 2 weeks. So if you have any comments, again, we strongly suggest that you either ask them tonight of us or mail them in to us using our mailer, or there's an email address associated with the website. We'll show you the email address here in a little bit, and it's also on our website. Following the closing of the public comment period, we will put together a summary of the public meeting, come out in about 30 days. And then a few months down the road, we'll have an action memorandum that we'll come out with. One thing of note, throughout the entire process and even ongoing through once the decision is made, the community will be involved in that process. We'll continue to keep the community informed of what activities we'll be performing. I know the bottom part here is a little bit hard to read, but once an alternative is selected, we will issue a request for proposals to implement whatever alternative is selected. We'll award a contract. We'll perform any characterization that is needed associated with that alternative, and then we'll begin implementing whatever alternative is selected, and then there'll be project closeout. Go back over to Leslie.
Okay. So to summarize, we've gone over the environmental management mission, the Naval Reactors mission, the decision to be made about 2 facilities in the northern part of the site, and presented that information to you, and documents that, the fact sheets are there. I mentioned fact sheets about the process, about general information, about the circle process, about transportation, which we know is an issue in this community. So we've got fact sheets, we've got a lot of information for you, we've got the website. So, information, the public comment period extends until October 4th, another couple weeks. There's an email address specific to the ECA, so please, by all means, send us your comments and questions. There's a project website, updated all the time. And then if you wanted to communicate with Matt Young from the EM program, there's his phone number and there's his email address. There's also a QR code associated with the website. So at this point, we'll stop with the recording and we can open it up for questions. There's different ways to do the questions and answers. You can ask a question from your seat. You can email a question. You can, there's a lot of different ways to get your questions answered. So you can send them in tonight, you can send them in within the next couple of weeks. We are really looking forward to hearing from you with your questions, be able to answer those questions. So by all means, ask away. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but we'll refer them to either the EM program and our program to be able to respond to them. And as I mentioned too, there's a lot of information here available on these tables about this project and the website. The website is a wealth of information. Anything that has been published about this project is available on that website for you. So, anybody have any questions? Comment period for a couple more weeks. Email address specifically to the project, and you will receive an acknowledgement that your comment was received, and we'll assess the comment and see the best way to get back to you. The project website is loaded with information. That's the QR code that will take you to it. And then there's the EM contact from Matt Young. So thank you very much for coming this evening, and we appreciate you being here. By all means, help yourself to fact sheets, Naval Reactors information, and we'll be here for a while longer. If you had some questions, if you wanted to talk, if you wanted to learn more about Naval Reactors, you've got the right people here. So thank you very much. You have a good night. Be safe travels home.
Thank you.